How does using precise language enhance the communication of ideas? In this lesson, you will learn how to inform an audience effectively by explaining a topic with precise language. We are writing in response to a prompt about a passage from Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. Frederick Douglass had the opportunity to interact with many people. Examine the text closely. How was Frederick's life impacted by these other characters? Write an informative essay to convey your ideas about this question. Let's review the writing process. When responding to an essay prompt about literature, the first step is to read closely and analyze the text. Step 2 is to generate ideas and make a preliminary plan for writing. Step 3 involves drafting the essay and revising to prepare your work for Step 4, where you edit and publish. In this lesson, we will be working on Step 3, specifically revising one of the body paragraphs of the essay. Very important point. Precise language is vital in communicating ideas. There are two questions that are helpful when thinking about what it means to use precise language. The first question is, will this make sense to my reader? The second question is, could the reader understand this better if I used different words? There are 3 steps in our core lesson. Step 1, review your writing for non-specific language. Step 2, ask yourself, is there a more precise way to communicate this point? And step 3, revise your writing using more precise language. Let's start with step 1. Review your writing for non-specific language. I have the first draft of my paragraph here, and I have some things highlighted. I want you to notice what happens as I read. 2 other characters had a profound impact on Frederick Douglass, even though he never met them in person. Douglass encountered them vicariously through reading some book. One guy had been returned to another guy after having run away for the 3rd time. In a dialogue between these guys, one guy was represented as being very smart. He said such intelligent things in response to the other guy's arguments for slavery that the guy voluntarily set him free. Remember that first question? Will this make sense to my reader? No, it doesn't make sense to me, and I'm the one who wrote it. Remember the second question? Could the reader understand this better if I used more precise language? I'm thinking yes. I need to use more precise language in order to help the reader understand which book Frederick read and which characters in the book influenced his life. So now I need to sort this out in my mind so that I can figure out exactly how to help my reader better understand what I've written. So I'm going to move to step 2. Ask yourself, is there a more precise way to communicate this point? If I'm thinking about helping my reader, I need to use more precise language in order to help the reader understand the phrase some book. I want them to know which book exactly and exactly who these guys are. I can take care of this part about the book because I have the exact title in my notes, The Columbian Orator. I also know that in my notes I have written down that these guys are a slave and his master. So now that I've got it straight in my head, I'm thinking, revise. Use words to tell the reader exactly which book Frederick read and exactly which characters influenced his life. So I can do that first by looking at this part where I have some book. Again, thinking about my reader, I want to clarify. I want to revise to tell exactly which book. So instead of saying some book, I can change that to the Columbian Orator. Now let's look at the remainder of the paragraph. There are all these references to guys. If my reader is going to understand, my reader needs to know who these guys are. I know from looking at my planning notes that one character was a slave and one was the slave's master. Now, if I circle all the references to the slave and underline all the references to the master, that will help me sort out how I need to revise the paragraph to help my reader also understand. So here are all the references to the slave, and here are all the references to the master. Now I am thinking, revise to tell exactly who these characters are. So I'm ready for step 3. Revise your writing using more precise language. Notice the revisions I have made. The first revision was to clarify which book Frederick read by including the title. Then I made revisions to clarify who is the slave and who is the master. Now we can read it to see if it makes better sense. Two other characters had a profound impact on Frederick Douglass, even though he never met them in person. Frederick encountered them vicariously through reading a book entitled The Columbian Orator. In this book, he read about an encounter between a runaway slave and his master. The slave had been returned to his master after having run away for the third time. In a dialogue between the slave and his master, the slave was represented as being very smart. He said such intelligent things in response to his master's arguments for slavery that the master voluntarily set him free. Wow! Revising for precise language is very important. Now the reader will know exactly which book Frederick read and exactly the roles of the characters who were talking about slavery. Our core lesson had 3 steps. Step 1, review your writing for non-specific language. Step 2, ask yourself, is there a more precise way to communicate this point? Step 3, revise your writing using more precise language. In this lesson, you have learned how to inform your audience effectively by explaining a topic with precise language.